Hi everyone, Jennifer Zeller with the Zeller team. I want to dive in today. There's been a lot of news really about the NAR, National Association of Realtors, $415 million settlement to settle the lawsuits. And the lawsuits were related to sellers saying that they felt like they were forced to give 6% and give a percentage of that to the buyer's agent. They didn't have any options. And so the settlement, in this settlement, NAR, National Association of Realtors, which is our trade association. So, any associations that doctors belong to or lawyers belong to or physical therapists, and it's kind of our trade association as realtors. So what the settlement says is that that agents can no longer be required to list on the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, what percentage they will give to cooperating agents, so the buying agent. So that the lawsuit is saying we can no longer, right now for MLS, when agents go in there, they can see what is the percentage that they'll give to the buyer's agent. Starting in July, that will no longer be there. They cannot list it there. But what the settlement does not appear to say is that they can't list it other places. So they can't list it in MLS because that's affiliated with our national association. But agents, it appears that they could list it on their own brokerage sites, on their own websites. I'm curious, could they list it on Zillow? Could they list it on homes.com? So we'll see, as anything, when something first comes out, where all the dust settles, we'll find out in the future. But so just to recap before we dive into the details, Friday came out, the National Association of Realtors settled for $415 million to settle the lawsuits that were brought by sellers saying that they felt like there was no competition. They were forced to give a certain amount to buyers, and so to settle, NAR has agreed that they will no longer require the buyer's amount to be listed in MLS. As a quick thought, why did that even start in the first place? Well, it started for a couple of reasons, but two of the reasons are that it's good for buyers to be represented in the transaction. I'm sure it stopped a lot of lawsuits because buyers had representation. It would be like if you go to court and you represent yourself and somebody else has an attorney, what are your odds? They're not as good. Some people, of course, will do a good job and are capable, and some people are not. The majority, that's not their specialty. So it was helping buyers when they're in the home transaction make sure they had representation. Another thing is it probably stopped discrimination. Like if it's listed right in MLS, you're going to get this percentage if you, enter into this transaction, your agent will get this amount. Well, if it's not listed, the potential existed for a listing agent to tell one agent, I'll give you 3%, and one agent say, I'll give you 1%. The potential existed for an agent to say, I will give that buyer 3% to their agent, I'll only give that buyer 1% to their agent. And so by, listing on MLS, when anyone came in there, you knew the amount that the agent would get. So that's kind of what the settlement says. It cannot be listed. What it doesn't say, what you've really seen in the news, is kind of like clickbait headlines, even from CNN. Because it's saying home prices are going to fall. There's going to be no more 6%. So the settlement does not say that there can't be 6%. The settlement does not say that sellers can't offer to pay a percentage of the buyer's agent. It just said it cannot be listed. It cannot be required to be listed in MLS. A side note to all this, the Department of Justice has, about a couple weeks ago, started kind of putting out feelers saying that they were interested in, how the transaction works. So I imagine when the Department of Justice reviews this settlement, if they don't like it, they could, reopen it. They could dig in to do their own things. But we'll have to see, maybe this in part appeases the Department of Justice too. So who is this going to affect? Well, I feel like it's really going to affect every part. Again, like I say, I feel like this is how I feel. This is not how my brokerage feels. This is not how our local MLS feels, and our local associations, national. It's just what I think. But I think it'll affect like all parts of the transaction. It's going to affect buyers. Buyers are going to have different conversations. It's going to affect buyers' agents because together they're going to have more direct conversations up front, like, this is my commission, this is how we will try to get it paid. If it doesn't get paid, then, then it'll be in the settlement amount. It's going to affect listing agents. Listing agents are going to have more clear conversations with sellers. Would you like to give some of this money to the buyer's agent? You don't have to give any of this money to the buyer's agent. What percentage would you like to give? Is it negotiating? So it'll be really more clear, maybe conversations there. It'll affect lenders. Lenders get a lot of their clients from agents who have buyers, but also lenders. Right now, part of the transaction is, in the sales amount is just a set commission. Not the set agreed upon commission that this listing agent and the sellers have. But what if it comes in like buyers have to write into the contract, like, pay my listing agent this amount of money? Lenders are not gonna lend. Like, for example, like if somebody writes into a contract, including all the furniture in the house, lenders are gonna make you take that out because they're not gonna give you a loan that isn't based on the actual value of the home. So if it was written in the contract that part of the purchase price is to pay my seller, well, what are lenders going to do? Because that's not, the value of the home. So it'll be interesting to see how that washes out. It's going to affect some buyers even more than others, like first-time buyers who haven't been in the transaction, won't feel comfortable with all the pieces. VA loans say that the buyer cannot pay for the commission. So what's going to happen for VA loan buyers? Like if it says you cannot pay, because let's say you bought a home and the seller said we're not paying any of the buyer's commission, but then the VA loan can't pay theirs. How is that going to work out? There's really in this whole lawsuit, and it's just so new. There's so much of the unknown, but really I feel like every part of the transaction, every person's thinking like, this is going to change things. This is going to change things. So our buyer agent's going to be gone? No, I really don't think so. So you think about it, buying a home is often one of the biggest transactions of your life, one of the biggest commitments. And it's not something you do. The people buy and sell a home on average right now every 11 to 13 years. So every 11 to 13 years, it's really hard for any one person to be an expert. So for the majority of the people, they're going to want to have an agent. But why? Well, just think about if the home only sells between every 11 to 13 years, how much changes? Like I think, and sometimes when parents come in with their sons and daughters to look at a house and like, well, when I bought a house, we would never go over asking. Well, in the market right now, that wouldn't happen. Some houses you would, but there's plenty of houses that you're not going to get unless you're willing to go over asking. They might say, well, when I bought a home, we always did an inspection and we never gave any leeway. Like right now, sometimes with inspections we're writing, we won't ask for anything under $2,000. So my point here is because if you're, why does that mean somebody use an agent? If you're using a top-level agent, they know what offers need to be right to get a home accepted. They know what's going on in the market right now. And so if you're not doing the transaction that often, a lot changes year to year, spring to fall. And if you're buying in the spring and you're buying in the fall, there's different things that are going to happen. And so if you're not using a buyer's agent, how are you going to be prepared to make the offer that wins you the home? I think that, as usual, they are in anything. There will be people qualified to do it on their own, but they're already doing it. Nothing stops somebody who is qualified to do a transaction on their own from not using a buying agent. It's just that the majority of the people won't want to. I think if you think about what it requires to win a transaction and to win the home, you need to know that the home exists. You need to know how many have a relationship with the agents in the area. You probably, better relationships get you more likely to win a home. You need to know, what do you need to offer? Can you go below? Can you go above? Well, of course, that's dependent on the market. And not only that, like, I'm going to include a stat here. Like, if you look just in the 4-county area in Milwaukee, like how different each county, how many homes have sold, like how much inventory. So it's not even good enough to know, like, oh, nationally prices went up, this much. Yeah, but how much do they go up in Ozaukee County compared to Washington County? What is the inventory like right now in Milwaukee County compared to Waukesha County? And so you need to know all these things when you're running an offer. You need to have relationships. You need to have negotiating skills. So I'm not just kind of glossing it over, but those are the things that you need to have a successful transaction. And so I don't think the majority of people are going to go without a buyer's agent. It kind of like to like give a little glimpse into my own life, like how I feel about people using a buyer's agent or not. Like we said, some people have the ability not to, and also some people will be able to use like an okay buyer's agent and get the transaction done. A lot of times people are going to need a top level buyer agent though to get the home. And I think of myself like 2 examples. So I don't know if you knew this, but I'm actually a CPA. Don't be shocked. Yep, I'm a CPA, and I do like I do the bookkeeping for our business along with an accountant. So technically, I could do like audits or taxes. I mean, I'm a CPA. I haven't practiced, professionally for 30 years as a CPA. Not hard to believe, maybe. So would somebody want to use me? Maybe on some simple simple accounting matter, they would ask me. But, are they going to have me do taxes? No. And so it's kind of an example of like, who are you going to use? Of course, some people might use me do some accounting thing for them because I could easily do some simple things. High level transactions? No. Another example I always think of where I'm not in any way qualified and a simple solution is dog grooming. I sometimes take the scissors to my dogs to, trim them up, and I immediately regret it. They look ridiculous, especially my cute little Havanese and even my golden all chunked up. It's terrible. I should never do it. But it's not as serious as buying a home, right? Like taking, their hair grows out. It's not like I owe a debt on it for the next 30 years. But again, with dog grooming, so I could get like, an okay dog groomer, which would probably be good enough for my golden. For like my Havanese, like the better the groom, the better on your little white fluffy dogs the groomer is, the more professional, the better off you are. So it's just kind of 2 examples of why, like, I think the majority of people are still going to use buyer's agents. There are some people, but they always existed, who don't need them, and they won't use them. Let's see here. And the other thing is that the reason that buyer's agents are going to exist is because if you're using just a listing agent, how do you know they have your best interest in mind? Probably more than likely they have the seller's best interest in mind, maybe their own best interest in mind. But if you just work with just the listing agent, like how do they, and it's not because they're bad or there's no ulterior motive, but when you're trying to negotiate inspections, well, the relationship started with the seller. And so, they're going to try to get what's best for the seller, probably. Not in any bad way, because they're going to be as fair to you as they can be. But, if you're meeting in the middle, sometimes also you're not getting, if you're meeting in the middle with just one transaction, one person leading the transaction, are you in the right place? It kind of makes me actually think of my divorce. Sometimes people do collaborative divorce, one person, and when people walk away, how often do they feel like, I don't know, was that fair to me or was that fair to them? Or like, do either one of us feel good about this? Whereas if you each have your own attorney, like when you get divorced, you maybe at least feel like at least somebody was looking out for your best interest. I feel like, side note, most divorced people walk away and they think like, I don't know if I'm happy with that, but you're never questioning, like, did my lawyer have my best interest in heart? They did. So I just think those are kind of some similar things. to dive in a little deeper, and I alluded to it, like, what does a buyer agent do? Like, you hear people say, like, well, I found my house, I didn't need an agent. Like, if finding the house was the only thing your agent did for you, life would be good. And life would be easy, and probably your buyer's agent would be overpaid if all they had to do was find you the house. Like, here's the house, this is all we're gonna do, and we're good here. But that is really, really just the starting point. So I made a list here because I don't want to forget. When you find the house, then we're going to go in, we're going to make an offer. There is, I forgot the number, for sure over 30 items that you negotiate in a transaction. And so if you're not, professional, if you haven't been trained, if you aren't always educating to improve yourself in writing these contracts, how do you not know all these, or how do you know how to negotiate all these pieces? Just the closing date, like what closing date do they want? What can you get with your lender? The acceptance date, like how long are you going to give them to accept your offer? Inspection, what are the terms on the inspection? When the inspection is done, negotiating who can come in, the work they can do, who's going to pay for the work, are you going to take a lump sum, the appraisal. Let's say you offered amount of money, and when you go to your lender, it doesn't come through that they're going to price that much money. All right, who's dropping the price? Who's bringing more money? Who's doing all that negotiating? Right to cure for both of those. Let's say your inspection, didn't come out that great, and you want somebody to fix it. Do they have the right to cure it? Or if it doesn't come out good, like if the roof is bad, do you want to walk away? Well and water inspection, who's paying for that? I know most buyers don't realize the seller usually pays for that. So if you don't have an agent who's negotiating that for you. So it's another thing that we do. And it's just so far, even these are all relationships that your buyer's agent has curated. Good inspectors, good contractors to do the work. Your well and water relationships, who's coming in and doing that. Home warranties, are you going to have a home warranty included? Yes or no? Who's paying for it? What's included in the house? What's not included in the house? How are the taxes going to be divided up? And these are really just some of the starting points. And again, each one of those, they might be a negotiation. They might be, because like I've talked about, like when we talk with our lenders, it's kind of like, as a transaction's going on, your agent's working with your lender, they're working with title, they're working with the other agent, and it's, there's a lot of balls in motion. It's relationships, it's negotiation. Is a buyer prepared to do all those things when they don't do them very often, or they haven't done them ever before? I think, and let's say you get your offer accepted, then also just negotiating like counter offers. What if you get a multiple counter offer? All those things. So like, again, when you see people say like, I found my own house, that's great. And I think that just means is that like, they probably were set up on a search. They saw the search before your agent did. Your agent didn't have time to assess, like, is this a good one for my clients or not? But really the deep work really begins once the transaction starts, once it gets accepted. And the thing is, up until that time, your agent is working for free for you. One of my favorite clients, we saw like over 80 houses. Of course, we became like friends. We saw so many houses. Like, I gladly worked for free for them that whole time. And let's say you get into an offer, you get an accepted offer, it falls apart. Did you know that 15% of homes, I have a stat that I'll include a picture of, like 15% of homes, like for example, in August of 2023, fell apart. 15%. Like, again, first of all, if you have a buyer's agent, they're again working for free, and they don't care, because agents are here to like serve their clients. And I think the majority of us, that's why we do it, is because we want to help people through this transaction. And actually, you think about it, if 15% are falling through, if people didn't have a buyer's agent, probably a much higher number. So that, I feel like sellers really are going to want their agent working with another agent to make sure you get an accepted offer and you're halfway through it. You don't want it to fall apart. You don't want to put your house back on the market, all those things. The other thing is that agents, like, they don't get paid until close, but also there's no health care. They're doing it without benefits. It's truly a small business. You work weekends, you work evenings, you pay your broker, you pay taxes, you pay mileage. And so I think people maybe don't take all those things into account either when they're like, I found my house. Anyways, so I wanted to dive into some of the questions that we got from our friends, like what will happen with FSBOs. Again, that's going to be a negotiation. And can you imagine two people who don't very often do the transaction trying to get through to a point that, first of all, people are happy and that there's no one thinking they should sue afterwards. I think I don't know. I think that FSBO still will be working with buyer's agent. I think, even now when people have their home listed as a FSBO, oftentimes a buyer agent comes in and negotiates their payment through the FSBO. Will listing agents do both? They might, and they already do that, right? Sometimes people walk in an open house, write an offer with the listing agent. So that could continue to happen. Again, that one of the things that Michelle and I are grateful that we don't have to do it, because like if I have a listing, somebody comes in and wants to write an offer, I can give that to Michelle. Her and I don't talk about it. She is negotiating for them. I'm negotiating for the seller. And if you think Michelle and I want to agree on those things, like when we're working on the same one transaction, separate sides, you don't know us very well. We both want to win for our clients. So sure, that's going to continue. Listing agents will do both. And there's countries where listing agents, they just have one listing agent and they do this whole transaction. But again, how does the buyer feel like they're getting the best representation if they're just working with the listing agent? But also, how does the seller feel like they're getting the best representation if your listing agent's working with a buyer to like try to get the transaction to go through? Will buyers just go to open houses? That kind of leads into the last question. Sure, they might, but are they going to get? It has the old CPA in me. Also, if you get down to the numbers, if a buyer thinks like I'm going to do this without paying for a buyer's agent, are you maybe getting the least amount of money? Paying the least amount of money, because like a good agent is being able to negotiate things down for you, maybe, or hopefully negotiate where you're not paying as much maybe as you had the highest amount. In this market that can be different, but then they can get you the house. Two things, I guess, like if the buyer's agent thought I'll just go to open houses, like, do you know how much better of an offer you're gonna have to write in a competitive market? Not necessarily. Do you know that that the listing agent is going to really want your offer to win? No, because like if you think of the buying agent, like I'm working trying to get the best offer in to win. Because if you think you go on open house, maybe two people are writing an offer, maybe yours isn't good enough. They don't care. They're not going to tell you. There's just a lot of murkiness there. And the other thing is, let's say it's not as competitive time as right now. Will a buyer, let's say the roof needs repair, the buyer didn't have a good inspector, they might be spending a lot more money if they didn't use a buying agent to get out the relationships, the excellent contractors they have. Or maybe they'll even be able to negotiate a better price just up front. Every real estate market isn't like this one, and so there's different times, but I think in either case, the buyer is better off working with an agent who knows the market, who is up to date on the top, educational things, who understands what contracts are getting accepted right now, things like that. Somebody asked us, are we nervous? And Michelle even asked me that. I'm not that nervous. I'm pretty good with change, kind of rolling with it. But the other reasons I'm not nervous is because I know that what does it take to be a good buying agent? It takes understanding of your market. Michelle and I work. Whoa, lights are out. Michelle and I work on our knowledge of the market 5 days a week. We watch a show every morning that brings us up to the market. We're watching our local stats. I'm also not afraid because Michelle and I take the time to develop the relationships with other agents in our area. So we have an ability to, work well with other agents, with selling agents. I am not afraid because I feel like Our trademarks, are excellent communication, knowledge of market, extraordinary marketing. Well, the two of the three, those for sure, lead to being excellent buyer's agents. The other reason I'm not afraid is because I feel like Michelle and I both kind of work well in the unknown. I mean, for goodness sake, Michelle walked onto the mom bragging moment. Michelle walked onto Iowa's softball team, started for 4 years, and got a Big Ten second team. Like, she thrives in proving herself. So I'm not that afraid. So what do we believe? So we believe that most people are going to continue to use buyer's agent for both sides of a transaction, actually. We absolutely believe some people can do it on their own. They've been doing it on their own. They will continue to do it on their own. But we really believe that the majority of people are better off being represented by a professional, and I don't think that's going to change. What we don't know. How will agents get paid? That's kind of the big unknown right now, I would say. Possibilities. It could be people write in seller's credits. It could be they write in that the listing agent will pay the buyer's agent this amount of money. It could be, in some cases, I guess that the buyers would agree to pay, and the closing settlement, they'll pay the buyer's agent for their services. How will it affect the lending process? We don't really know yet. Will it affect, if it gets written into a contract as a seller's credit or as part of the selling price? Will lenders be okay with, covering that amount? And I mean, because I guess if you think about it, it's part of the home value is to get it. I don't know. We'll see. We don't know. How it affect the appraisal process? That kind of leads into the lending process. Will the appraisers appraise to a value that included the listing, saying that the buyer's agent's paid? We'll see. How will it affect VA loans? And, will that change? That VA buyers cannot pay the buying agent? Is that going to change? How will that work? Will the DOJ be okay with the settlement, or are they going to kind of dive into it too? All things that we'll have to see. With all the unknown, what can you expect from the Zeller team? You can expect that we will continue to educate ourselves on the market every day. Well, every day, most days. We will know what our market is going on in our market. You can expect from us that we're going to be the top level educated agents. We are always learning. We're taking courses. We're learning all that we can from our brokerage. So you continue to expect that we will be top level agents as far as writing contracts. And you will provide top level service. I think that's one of the things I really didn't dive into, but I think providing excellent service to buyer's agent is really going to matter. And you can honestly, in all of this, expect honesties. We're going to continue to do videos on what is going on with all this, what you can expect, what buyers can expect. Anyways, thanks for watching. It's interesting times, and I love interesting times. Have a great day. Jennifer Zeller, Red Shoe Realtor. Again, just to be clear one more time, this is only how Michelle and I think about all this. This is not related to our brokerage, our local real estate association, anyone, and just the Zeller team. Anyways, have a great day. Thank you.